What's going on, guys? Welcome to another Doctor Who review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 15th Doctor Ncuti Gatwa story, The Devil's Chord. So it's episode 2 from season 1, or technically it's actually episode 3 because The Church on Ruby Road, at least on Disney Plus, is apparently counted as episode 1 of this season, which I think is really confusing. Like, it's that just in my head is just very annoying because now is Space Babies episode 1 or is it episode 2? Is this episode 2 or episode 3? I don't know. It's a bit confusing, but anyway, this is The Devil's Chord. For me, I'm counting it as episode 2. That's how I'm doing it. So, yeah. This is the Beatles episode, of course. Turned out the Beatles weren't actually in it a whole lot, to be honest. But, yeah, let's get started, as we always do, with the cast. Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor. Ncuti was really good in this story. I liked him in Church on Ruby Road. I liked him in his short appearance in The Giggle. I liked him in The Space Babies. But I think in this one, he stepped it up a bit for me. He really felt more in the role this time. Sorry if you can hear that bird outside. That was very loud. It sounded really close. You probably didn't even hear it. But if you did, that is what it was. Yeah, Ncuti was great in this episode. I think he was absolutely there in the role. And yeah, there's not really much else I can say about it. Just definitely had some very scared and, serious moments that he did really, really well. And then the funnier bits as well. Not as many in this story, but yeah, all in all, really, really good stuff. Millie Gibson as Ruby Sunday. I think this was probably my favourite story for her so far as well. I think she did a really great job. I am quite liking Ruby Sunday as a companion. I'm not going to say she's my favourite yet, but she's definitely, growing on me, and I'm quite enjoying her so far. And yeah, I thought the performance in this one was good. She had plenty to do in this story, and yeah, not really much else to say, just good stuff. I am also going to mention Jinx Monsoon as Maestro. So Maestro is the main baddie of this story. Now, I've heard a lot of people online saying that they really liked Maestro, and as a character generally, I also really like the character. I think they were really, really good. Now, the actual portrayal, because a lot of people have been saying they love the portrayal. Now, I didn't know Jinx Monsoon before this. I haven't looked at any of their, portfolio, I guess, even now. So my only reference is this Doctor Who. I know that they're a drag queen and a performer of some kind. That's all I really know. Now, I can't say that personally I am really that into drag queens as performers. It's not my sort of thing. It's not my vibe. Good on them for what they do, but personally, it's not my sort of thing. So maybe that's why I don't really get on with. It's not even really with the I don't really know what it is, because on one hand it's a really good performance. I can totally see that, and there's moments where Jinx Monsoon does a great job and has some really great moments. There are a lot of moments though where personally for me it goes a bit overboard, and it's a bit too campy. And I've said this before, Doctor Who is a camp TV show, but I think there are instances that I've seen over these last 2 episodes, to be honest, where for me it pushes it a bit too far. And yeah, the Maestro character, specifically, I think played in the way it is a bit too much for me personally. I like the character on the most part. I think the performance is good, but it does overstep some marks for me personally. So yeah, it does put me off a little bit. Alright, so on to some moments of this episode. First of all, the intro starts on piano. So we actually get a cold open for this one. One thing I didn't even mention in Space Babies, we didn't have a cold open. The episode just started with the titles. I've seen a couple of people say they're not a big fan of that. It doesn't really bother me. It's, well, supposedly the first episode in the series, so I don't mind that. I'm glad that we get a cold open this episode, though, and it is a very good cold open. We're introduced to Maestro straight away. You've got the guy on the piano with the kid, and he plays the Devil's Chord. Maestro comes out of the piano and yeah, basically kills that guy, kills the kid. Although the kid, well, I don't know if they do. I'm not saying, sorry. I need to make sure I don't say she, they. I don't think they kill the kid. I don't know what happens to them. They like disappear, and then the guy gets wrapped up in all the chords, and then it's a bit of a fourth wall break where Maestro then starts playing the Doctor Who theme. It's like dun 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 dun, and then it goes into the theme, and it keeps playing the piano for a little bit, and then eventually it just goes into the normal theme. It would have been cool if the whole theme was on the piano. I thought that would have been quite cool. But yeah, I did quite like that as an opening. The dog song the Beatles were singing. Now, I'm going to be honest, I love this bit. I actually really like the start of this episode. I thought, Jinx, although a bit over the top, even right at the start with the performance for me, personally, like I said, it's a personal thing for me. And I think a lot of other people feel the same way. But yeah, it's just, yeah. What else? I've already said what I want to say, but generally, the start of this episode with all that, with when the Doctor and Ruby get to Abbey Road Studios and they see the Beatles, and then the Beatles start singing this song about, I can't exactly remember, but it's something about a dog, and I love my dog, or it's this weird song, and you just see the Doctor and Ruby's faces like, what is going on here? This is not what I expect from the Beatles. It's a really funny moment. It goes on for quite a while, and part of me thinks, does it go on for a bit too long? But I don't think it does. I think it just builds, and just the look on the Doctor and Ruby's face is priceless. The mention of the junkyard and Susan, I loved this moment. A callback to literally the first ever episode of Doctor Who, An Unearthly Child, when the Doctor was in the junkyard with the TARDIS, and of course Susan, his granddaughter, with him. That was such a cool moment. It almost, to me, it's either a red herring or it is a call that we're going to see Susan at some point, if not this season, maybe next season. Because to bring her up, she hasn't really been mentioned by name from what I can think of in the whole new series. So yeah, to bring that up in the way that they did, I don't know. I'm almost expecting Susan now. Maybe not this season, but potentially in season 2. Ruby playing the piano. So we know that Ruby can play piano, or at least play keyboard, because in Church and Ruby Road, we saw her playing in her band. She's playing on the keyboard. So, and that gets brought up. I like that whole thing of, the Doctor was there watching. And then she starts playing on the piano. Now, I really liked the song she was playing. It felt very Murray Gold, which I'm sure it was. And it just felt like something you would hear in the Doctor Who soundtrack. And I was really enjoying it. And then it went on for a bit too long. I thought it did go on for a bit too long. It was almost a complete song, and then eventually she plays this Devil's Chord, and Jinx Monsoon, Maestro, arises from the piano. And this, for me, is where it does start going downhill a little bit. I really enjoyed the first, I don't know, what was it, 10, 15 minutes of the episode, whatever it is, up until kind of that piano point. I really enjoyed that stuff. I enjoyed the intrigue of what was going on with the Beatles, when the Doctor and Ruby were talking with the Beatles about everything that was going on, everybody seeming really miserable. I was really intrigued by that. But then once we got to this point, it started to fade off a little bit for me. Maestro did the Toymaker's laugh. I did like that. That was a good moment. When Maestro came up out of the piano, the Doctor and Ruby ran off, and you heard the Toymaker, the ha 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 laugh that Maestro did. And the Doctor, I mean, you only really briefly hear him say it, but as he's running off with Ruby, he's like, oh no, that's, he says something about the Toymaker, and you're just like, and he's terrified. He's like, I can't do this again. He seems really worried. He's like, I already literally got split in half, like, from this experience from, the Toymaker. And they mentioned the Toymaker's legions, and it actually turns out that that Maestro is apparently a child of the Toymaker, which I thought was pretty cool, interesting. So she's the first, I imagine, of the Toymaker's Legion that we've been hearing about since the Giggle, that we get to see. So that was very intriguing. The Earth will be destroyed if Maestro wins. Okay, I said before that the piano bit was where it started going downhill. Maybe not quite, because I did like this moment as well. They travel back to where did they? I think they travel to 2024, don't they? Like July 2024, present day for when this story is supposed to be taking place. And the Earth is all destroyed because of music. Now, although I do like the aesthetic of it, I like the sadness of the scene, and it, really changes the vibe for a little bit. It does make me feel a bit like, so the Earth, literally, people cease to exist on Earth because there's no music anymore. How does that work? Like, literally, no music is gonna kill us all. I found that a little bit far-fetched, but yeah. The song Ruby heard at the church is too powerful for Maestro. So yeah, I don't 100% know what was going on there. Ruby gets captured by Maestro. She's got the notes strung up all around her, but then the Christmas song that Ruby that was playing when Ruby was picked up at the church when she was a baby starts playing. And that's too much for Maestro when she manages to break free. I guess it kind of makes sense, but it's a bit like, okay. The Doctor and Maestro's music battle. Now, I didn't love this. This was a bit that did seem a bit too, for me. Maestro's literally like, let's have a music battle. She grabs a violin out, the Doctor's on the piano, and they start just playing music back and forth, and once again, it felt like it went on a bit too long. It felt very campy. It felt just like a bit of a time waster to me. Yeah, didn't love that. John and Paul play the final chord to banish Maestro. So what ends up happening is the Doctor figures out that to get rid of Maestro, he's got to play this other chord. So, although it's not just one chord though, it is literally like a whole kind of a whole set of notes. I don't know what you want to call that. So he plays all these notes, and I don't know how he knows which notes to play. He seems to just do it like, oh, I know which notes I'm playing. It's like 6 or 7 notes in the end. He gets all the notes bar one, and then he goes to do the last note, and he plays the wrong note. So doesn't destroy Maestro. So then Maestro manages to tie up the Doctor and Ruby. Ruby goes into the is it like a cello? It's not a violin, it's too big. I think it's like a cello or something. I'm not great with my musical instruments. And the Doctor gets shoved inside the drum. And then the piano gets thrown out into the hallway, which is where John Lennon rocks up and goes to play the final note. But then Paul McCartney also comes out, and they both play the final note together because apparently they knew what the final note was. Once again, how did they know this? Also, all the other notes that the Doctor played were still sat there. So when the Doctor played the note wrong, why didn't he just quickly go, oh, okay, well, I'll try this one, I'll try this one, I'll try this one. Ah, there we go, that's the right one, you're dead now. Instead, he did one note and then just gave up. I thought that was a bit like, okay, and I just generally didn't like the way it ended. It felt a bit too easy of an end. It felt too random that the Doctor just happened to know all these notes bar one. Paul McCartney and John Lennon just happened to play this one final note. It all felt a bit too easy and a bit anticlimactic. Then we've got the musical bit at the end. It was too much for me. Yeah, musical episodes, Doctor Who. I didn't like the musical part in the church on Ruby Road. I didn't like the musical part here. If anything, I probably preferred the Church on Ruby Road one. I thought that song was a bit more catchy, and I quite liked the Doctor and Ruby, getting involved with that. It was a bit silly, but it was a Christmas episode. It doesn't bother me as much. This time, they've defeated Maestro. Everything's back to normal. The world is, music is back to the way it should be. And then they just kind of break into song and dance. And this random twist song, which I didn't really like. It was a bit of an annoying song. The Beatles start singing it as well. No actual Beatles music in this story. I understand that, they probably didn't have the licensing for the Beatles. So I almost expected there to be no Beatles music, but still a bit of a disappointment. And yeah, once again, this scene, it goes on for a bit too long for my liking. It's very, it's just, I don't know. I just really... It's different, but I can't personally get on board with it, really. And then after that whole thing happens, the Doctor and Ruby get back to the TARDIS. They go over Abbey Road, over kind of the crossing, and that is now like playing music. So then they start playing music there, and that's just kind of like, okay, we're still going with this music thing. It drags on for a bit long. I'm not a big fan of it. So there we have it. The Devil's Chord, it's a bit of a mixed bag for me. I actually thought this one started very well. The first 10 or 15 minutes were really good. Once we actually started getting into the music battle and all that sort of stuff, I was not as interested. I thought it was a bit too cringy, but the stuff before that I thought was interesting. It would have been nice to see the Beatles involved a bit more. And yeah, the ending, the way they defeated Maestro was a bit too easy and a bit too... Yeah, just too easy, really, for me. I'm going to give The Devil's Chord a 6 out of 10. I preferred it to Space Babies, but not by a whole lot. Yeah, it just had a bit more going for it. It had quite a lot more going for it than Space Babies did, so that's why I'm giving it a higher rating. And the stuff at the start was definitely the best stuff I've seen so far in this era. But all in all, I just still wasn't the biggest fan of this one. So it's going to be a 6 out of 10 for The Devil's Chord. I am excited for the next episode, which I believe is called Boom. I believe that's the next one, isn't it? The Stephen Moffat episode. The next time trailer looks really good. It looks like it's going to be a bit more of a serious, darker episode, which I'm all here for these, because these first 2-3 episodes really have been quite light-hearted, silly episodes. So I'm hoping that the next one is going to be a bit darker, a bit more serious. Maybe that's where I'll start to really get on board with this era. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.